You've got kind of these three tracks in leadership. You can be aggressive, you can be passive, and you always are trying to push towards being assertive. It's that middle line between the two. When you're assertive, it means that you are able to, or you have been able to kind of build these boundaries, right? These bumpers within which you operate. Leaders we like the most, the people we like the most are those that have that assertiveness. No one really loves working with highly aggressive people. I think it's just kind of natural. People forget how to be assertive. They think they have to live in the aggressive or in the passive channels.
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for leaders who understand that lifelong learning will be your ultimate competitive advantage. I'm your host, Damon Lembi, 3-time best-selling author and CEO of Learnit, a live learning platform that has upskilled over 2 million people. Today, I've got a great guest. We have a lot in common. Her name is Juliana Sommer. She is the founder and CEO of Priority Architectural Graphics. She's grown her company from being a small nameplate shop into one of California's premier architectural signage firms. That's a huge accomplishment. And they have delivered major projects across transportation, housing, and government. And anytime you drive across San Francisco, you can see the work that they've done. And she's super proud of it, and she has every right to be. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I got a wide range of questions to talk about. We've both been in business for about 30 years. This is basically each of our first jobs, the support we've received from our family, some of the challenges and things we've been overcome, how AI is disrupting our markets, what it's like running a bootstrap business, and even dealing with imposter syndrome early on in our career. Juliana is a huge believer in the importance and the role of self-awareness, not only for yourself as a leader, but helping unlock the potential in others in your organization. Juliana, you and I have a lot in common. We both started our companies back in 1995, right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, bootstrapped. Neither of us ever had another job outside of these companies that we work for now, that we own and run. So in a city that in San Francisco, which is known for pivots and exits, what makes us so unique, so to speak?
It's different, right? I think, Damon, when you and I started talking and we started to kind of share our story, and 1995 was some magical year, I guess, right? I started in September of 1995. I started my sign company, but at the time it was just a little label nameplate company at the time, me in a little room. And then, fast forward 30 years, yeah, it's very unique, right? Because there's very few people that I talk to that haven't moved around, right? It's very, very common these days. And so when you mentioned that you were 30 years in the business, I thought, wow, I don't think I've talked to anybody in the last 10 years that I can say, shares that kind of space. I wish there were more.
Yeah, you don't see that too often on LinkedIn, right? Somebody's, 1995 to present. I mean, you scroll down and say, what's up with this person? So
we have the weirdest resumes, right? Our resume is 1995 to present. Yeah, it's super short, but
yeah. I guess we have to add in a lot of different things that's happened over the time. So tell us a little bit more about your business.
Sure. So I'm the founder of Priority Architectural Graphics. We're a sign manufacturing company. So we manufacture and install custom architectural signage. We're a sign company. So we make architectural signage, which is a fancy way of saying signs that are really stuck to a building permanently. So in other words, I'll say what we don't do. We don't do a lot of banners, and we don't do temporary signage and event signage, but we'll do signs for the airport, for a lot of multifamily housing, hospitals, corporate real estate. So a lot of our signs are hanging at SFO, for example. So if you fly into San Francisco, you get to your gate or you get to your baggage, typically you'll be using our signs as wayfinding to achieve that. And I started the company, like I was saying, in 95. We started it as Priority Engraving, and it was just a little nameplate company. So yes, over the last 30 years, we've grown from a little nameplate company to full architectural signage company that produces all sorts of signage systems.
And so what led you to come up with the idea for the engraving company?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. So my family comes from construction. So my father was an immigrant from southern China, and very entrepreneurial. I have a very entrepreneurial family back, from Asia and here. After he, landed as an immigrant, went to school and decided to, hang a shingle, so to speak, and he decided to become an electrician, an electrical contractor. So he found a partner, and they started an electrical contracting business. And it's very interesting, but electricians always need labels. When you think about it, it's kind of important because you need to label what you're doing. Otherwise, it's not always so safe. So electricians always need to, they need nameplates, and they need to, label what their panels, their switchgear, whatever it is, their equipment. So he would always be going to sign shops and making little labels to finish up his jobs. And after a while, again, that entrepreneurial spirit, he's like, well, if I'm needing this, I'm just going to go make them myself, right? If I need them for every single project. So we bought a little engraving machine. And I essentially started priority engraving by learning how to make labels on this little engraving machine. I started, making labels for him. I kind of took over the side business, the side hustle, so to speak. And, you can kind of say that I just make big labels now. The labels are much bigger.
So early on, were you and your dad kind of working side by side or together, at least a little bit?
Not so much. Yeah, we always were we segregated the businesses. So he was an electrical contractor. Eventually began a general construction company. So he was just doing his company. My company was completely separate. I'd started in a little 350 square foot room as a separate business. So it was kind of he helped with the genesis of the company, but they were separate from the beginning.
And so when you were in school or prior to doing this, did you ever think you were get into the engraving business like this and then lead into the sign business? Or what did you think you were going to be coming out of school?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you were to go back 31 years, I didn't really know what I was going to be. I think I kind of knew I was always entrepreneurial, but, I didn't really know where I was going to be channeling that energy. I went to school, I studied political science. I thought I would be a lawyer, maybe go to law school. I think I would be a really bad lawyer. And so I think it was like a Thanksgiving in 1994 was when my dad, who again, he had the genesis of the idea, he just kind of said, hey, so we got this little engraving machine and would you maybe want to learn, how to run it and see what you can do with it? And I thought, well, yeah, I didn't really have a job lined up in 1995. And I said, oh, why not? And so, it kind of started from that.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, with me, same thing. I always just kind of thought I was going to be a baseball player. Never had a job. Wasn't a fantastic student, to be honest, in school. And never in my wildest dreams I'd think that I'm 30 plus years later at Learnit. And by the way, thank you so much for coming to our anniversary party. That was really cool.
I'm a big fan of Learnit. I am a client of Learnit. I've been a client. I think I took my first course at Learnit. It was probably some sort of organizational course, right? I've taken negotiation classes at Learnit. I was a client at Learnit back when it was very much in person. So I loved going to, it was in New Montgomery, right? Or in New Montgomery?
It was probably New Montgomery. I mean, we started off at 250 Montgomery, and then we moved in 2006 to New Montgomery.
New Montgomery. Well, I remember, taking Bart down and getting ready for the class. I've done several classes where I spent, all day. I still use many of the skills that I learned at these both in person and classes online that we kind of moved to when we took classes during COVID. But I am a big fan of Learnit, and I can attribute a fair amount of my professional growth to the classes I've taken at Learnit.
Well, thank you, Juliana, for saying that. I appreciate it. I want to go back to think about one of your first big wins, big corporate wins. Mm-hmm. Who was it, if you can share, and how did you get that deal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My first big big contract was to supply the signs for the state, the California Civic Center building, which is right there adjacent to City Hall in San Francisco. The state building kind of takes up the block between Polk and, I guess it would be, let's see, there's Polk Street on one side, McAllister on the other, right? Yep. And so it was an exciting project, right in the Civic Center area of San Francisco. They were the general contractor was building a new 14-story tower adjacent to a very historic building. So it was a big construction project in 1998, and I got awarded to do the signs for that project, and it was the biggest contract by far that I could ever imagine getting, and I just worked my little tush off, right, to get everything done. There were a lot of parts of that project that I never had done before, right? So it was very scary.
Did you have any? Scary. Yeah, I was going to ask you. Did you have any imposter syndrome before accepting the deal about, gosh, whether or not you're even capable of fulfilling it?
Of course. Yeah, I was like swimming in imposter syndrome, swimming in it. Woke up and just was like constantly, and you really have to, when you wake up in that, the kind of soup of imposter syndrome, you really have to. You have to work really hard, right? That's one thing. You just have to tell yourself, you just got to work hard to get out of this soup. And sometimes you have to, you have to kind of have these tricks, right? To get through the day, to not let that soup kind of just weigh you down. But yeah, when you're, I would have been in my 20s at the time, mid 20s, right? With this big contract, with a lot at stake. Importantly, a newly built reputation or growing reputation. For me, those sorts of situations really, there's something about me. I just double down. Like, I will work very, very hard to make sure that failure is not an option, right? So I kind of relish in those situations where the imposter syndrome kind of comes on strong, right? It's an opportunity, it's a challenge.
How did it make you feel? I mean, here you are, you're from the Bay Area, right? You're here in the Bay Area. You get this big deal. How did it make you feel? What was your family like? I mean, it had to be a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was very exciting, very nerve-wracking. Wow, these are such great questions because it kind of brings me back to.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm reliving it myself from my days when we closed the gap at the first. Yeah, I love these stories.
Yeah. You almost like when you go back, you almost you get the visceral feeling you had in your tummy at the time, right? And that visceral feeling you have is there's a lot of fear. Right. You do lean on your family a lot. You can be very, hopefully very, in my case, I could be very vulnerable and candid in front of my family and tell them I'm scared. Right. I need a little help, whether, it was, maybe literally applying tape to the back of a sign. Right. Or just emotional kind of help. Right. I'm kind of need somebody to lean on. I need somebody to vent to right now because I'm kind of stuck, right? So anyways, you bring your family in, you bring your those who you can really be vulnerable in front of, to help you get through those moments. But I'll say that other kind of emotions, when it's finally done, when you do get, to the delivery date, right? For me, it would be like a grand opening date or a ribbon cutting date or a delivery date. And that kind of unveiling of a tangible product is, I will say, one of the most rewarding things, right? That I love about what I do. I can drive around virtually all the counties in the Bay Area and kind of point and say, yeah, we made that, we put that up this year, we worked with so-and-so to get that up. And you can kind of point to it, right? Like, oh, that we made, this we put in the ground, this we hung from there. And I I wouldn't give that part up about what I do for anything. It's very, very rewarding.
So for our listeners who maybe they're an entrepreneur, maybe they're just new in a leadership role, and I hear you speaking about vulnerability, but that's tough for somebody moving into a new position. What piece of advice do you give to somebody to be able to have that confidence to be vulnerable?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm going to answer it with kind of a thought that has been kind of, marinating in my head for a while. And that is, you've got kind of these three tracks in leadership. You can be aggressive, you can be passive, and you always are trying to push towards being assertive, right? It's that middle line between the two, right? That when you're assertive, it means that you are able to, or you have been able to kind of build these boundaries, right? These bumpers within which you operate, right? I think that, as leaders and people that work, around leaders, I think that the leaders we like the most, the people we like the most are those that have that assertiveness, right? No one really loves working with highly aggressive people. I think it's just kind of natural. You don't really like working with passive people as well. One of the things I've noticed is that there's been kind of this weird gravitation in the past kind of 10 years where people forget how to be assertive. They think they have to live in the aggressive or in the passive channels, right? I say that because I've been told by some people, some younger folks, wow, you come across as very aggressive. And I don't think I do. I will say I do come across as assertive, right? And I think part of assertiveness is also letting that vulnerability in, right? It's part of creating those channels, those boundaries that you work within, right? You have to know, when is it appropriate to be vulnerable, to understand that, hey, you've got some weaknesses. When is it appropriate to show your strengths, right? To really, understand, no, I know what I'm talking about here because I've experienced this for the last 20 years, 30 years, decades. And then also be able to say, listen, I don't know, I don't have experience in this realm. Those are the bounds in which you can live as an assertive person.
And why do you think it is so important to be more towards the assertive range than it is passive when it comes to leadership?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you don't want to be around a passive leader, right? Because then you're kind of, you're kind of like, kind of trying to come up with a good kind of an analogy or metaphor. You need, when you're kind of working in a situation or around folks that are too passive, right? You don't have these boundaries, right? So it's very difficult for folks that are working under passive leaders to know, are they going in the right direction? Are they going in a direction that's wasteful or, non-efficient? Like you need somebody to kind of create these boundaries for you, because this is how we all move forward, right? If you're working in kind of these you're working in a kind of arena where there's no boundaries, there's no lines, you can kind of, as somebody working, you can veer off course and end up, way out in left field, right? Just because you don't have, somebody who's passive isn't going to give you that containment. Right. And containment is really important for leaders to express, and for anybody working under a leader to see.
Absolutely. I mean, for a leader, I think one of your main responsibilities is to be clear, set goals, give you opportunities, right? But I see too many leaders who like to protect their comfort zone because having an assertive conversation or a difficult conversation is difficult for them. So that's why they come across as passive. And at the end of the day, you're really doing a disservice to the other person on the other side, right? Because they can't learn and grow or maybe even achieve their goals if you're too passive. But what I want to do now is, like you and I, look, we never worked for anybody. So when you started hiring employees and you had to lead not just your company, but your team, tell us a little bit about that journey, about your leadership style and how you've kind of grown and adapted over the years as a leader.
Oh, yeah. I did work at the Gap.
That counts in the Hillsdale Mall or something, or in
Yeah, close. Where I did a stint at Stonestown, did a stint at
okay.
Smartmoney. I don't think I was at Hillsdale ever, but yeah. Yeah, my leadership style has definitely, this concept of making sure that I find these boundaries to be able to be assertive has definitely. I was not there when I was in my early 20s. I was probably more on the passive side because I was learning these boundaries myself, right? I was kind of figuring out, okay, where are these channels that I work within? And so that a lot of that does kind of come, from time. So if you're an emerging leader, if you're a burgeoning leader, right? Remember that assertiveness comes from knowing what your strengths are, right? And so a lot of that kind of comes from experience, right? After many years, after 30 years, I know what my strengths are. And over 30 years, you're constantly trying to hopefully like be aware of what your blind spots are, right? What you don't know. But once those are starting to get defined, that's when you can really hone in on that. I would say that, the leadership style that most people would respect.
But how can somebody who doesn't want to wait 30 years to do that, right? They want to try to accelerate that process. Do you have any tips of maybe something that you would have done differently in your leadership journey that maybe they can learn from?
Yeah. One thing that I started really emphasizing is behavioral assessments in the last 10 years, kind of learning, how we all have these behavioral traits that we gravitate towards. There's a bunch out there. There's a predictive index. DISC is one that's very popular. Myers-Briggs. I don't know too much about Myers-Briggs. Work traits. So there's many, many. And, I was kind of introduced to them. And, at first I was like, okay, well, I can kind of be, I can do a lot of detail oriented stuff. And I can also, do sales. So I'm, wasn't so sure about them. But now over time, I've really grown to understand that they really help people know themselves, right? And I think that it's really important for young leaders, you need to know yourself, right? And you need to know the people around you. And these behavioral assessments do, as long as people are answering them correctly, and it's a good behavioral assessment, you can kind of know where you are on the spectrum of behavior and where your team members are on the spectrum of behavior. And then you can really, because there's no right or wrong answer. You're either going to be a highly influential person or a highly, kind of driven person or a very, technically minded person. You are you who you are, right? And as long as you know where you land and what makes you, what gives you the serotonin slips or the dopamine drops, because you're doing kind of what your behavioral, core likes to do. If we let ourselves settle into those places and we work with our team members, right? And we have a well-rounded team and we understand ourselves and we understand each other, and you can really drive forward a lot stronger. Maybe I can give you an example of how I used to think is like,
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm just going to use the DISC assessment, for example, DISC. So, you kind of get, you take a behavioral assessment and you kind of get placed, within 4 quadrants, right? You can be maybe a highly technical person or, a very influential person. I happen to fall high on the influence sphere, right? So I am a very, I like to sell. I like to, I like to be in front of a crowd. I like to lead, right? So, but, at the same time, when I was starting my business, I would have to do, my own bookkeeping and my accounting. So I'd have to get, very kind of specific to the details of the company, right? And do the numbers. And so I would shapeshift, right? I would just shapeshift. And then I would bring people onto my team and I would just kind of expect them to shapeshift as well. It's not always the smartest way, right? To, as your organization grows, it's probably better not to ask people to constantly shapeshift because it's pretty exhausting for a lot of people.
Very
It's very exhausting. So if somebody is a very natural Again, in the DISC spectrum, if they're a very high C, if they're a very technical person, right? C is kind of stands for conscientious, very technical person, and they like the details. They like maybe somebody who is a very strong project accountant, maybe really happy in that space, right? But if you ask them to shapeshift and go out and do some hard driving sales, they're probably not going to be too excited, right? And so, it's taken me some time to understand that and really respect these behavioral drivers of people, understand them, and then kind of work with that wonderful team that you have of well-rounded people.
No, I love that, because what I hear you saying, first of all, it starts off with self-awareness.
Yes.
And that is so important. And quite frankly, that took me quite a while to figure out too, and self-awareness, because one thing all leaders need to understand is you're always on stage. People are always looking at your behavior, how you're responding, you're communicating, showing up every day. And so you need to be really self-aware. And so that's one thing that I really need to learn. And then what I hear you saying after that is then really looking at your team and maybe using a tool like DISC or Colby or whatever it is, and understand your people's strengths and really point them towards their strengths. Because if you're shape-shifting, as you say, it does get very exhausting and can get overwhelming for individuals. And that is something that takes time to learn and get better at. And I'm just sitting here thinking about, my own self-awareness and flashback 15, 20 years. And gosh, it's almost even embarrassing sometimes. For you, do you look back, is there anything that you think about 15, 20 years ago and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I handled a situation like this way, and how you've learned how to adapt and grow and do it differently?
All the time. Are you kidding me? I think anybody who's doesn't have those, you're driving down 280 and it might be a stretch where there's not a lot of traffic and you just have these cringy moments and you just wish you had a time machine and you would have handled it better. I mean, I hope that leaders understand that, that's okay. You have those moments. I, of course, have so many of those cringy moments. I almost have too many to even draw one example of my mind swimming of so many. But, if you had a time machine and you could fix, right, maybe what you may have said, or maybe you weren't as kind to somebody as you really, wish you were. We don't have the time machine. We haven't perfected it. So all you can do is just not try to suppress those cringy moments, but to really think, know a little bit better. How would I handle it now? Right? What vulnerability would I show, or what sort of kindness would I show this time around? Yeah, there's plenty of them, Damon.
Well, I think the most important thing that you said there is that for the leaders, it's okay. It's going to happen. Nobody's perfect, and even when you're out there and you have your company values and you're going to live by those values, communicate and don't overpromise, but maybe something slips. Hey, it's going to happen. Just realize that you did it, get back on track, and maybe if you could have handled the conversation differently, you just got to kind of own up to it sometimes and just maybe even apologize to somebody over it. But I think as leaders sometimes and founders, we beat ourselves up too much over stuff because you don't have a time machine. You can't go back and you can't do anything differently. So the best thing you can do, and I love the way you said it, was just kind of learn from it. It's okay, and then just move forward. Now, speaking of time machines, another thing that you and I have in common that I'm proud of, and I'm sure you are, we've lived through at least 3 economic downturns. Right in the heart of it for the .com. Then there's the Great Recession in 2009. COVID was kind of a mess. I mean, who else knows what's going on? So first of all, which one of those were the most difficult for you and your organization, and how did you get through it?
Yeah, some of them, they're almost like a fever dream, right? Did that really happen? Especially the first one. It was 99 and it's so long ago. I mean, I feel right now that COVID was the hardest. It may be that there's some proximity bias working in that it was just so recent. And there's still, we're still dealing with fallout from COVID. It was just incredible, right? But yeah, I'd say that COVID was probably the toughest. It was a lot of opportunity. Through COVID, I acquired another company. right?
Before COVID or during?
During COVID, we had an acquisition. So we acquired a company that, was, just the owner was like, wow, I to your point, I can't do this a third time, right? He did the first recession, he did the second recession, and they can just take so much out of you, right? Where you're really just, you have zero in the well, or you have point one in the well, and you got to rebuild from that. And I think that he was like, yeah, this is going to be a tough one, right? And so at the moment, I had enough reserves where I said, okay, yeah, I'd like to acquire, and it's very, very difficult. It was a very difficult, trying to merge the two systems, right? I never acquired another company before, so I was building the plane and flying it at the same time, and a lot of things I would do differently. Oh my goodness.
Can you, if you had to go back, would you have still made that decision and acquired that company?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what you're talking about, I kind of did the same thing too. One of our main competitors just said, "That's it, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore." But people thought that we were nuts making that decision. So walk me through your thought process on that, because really what you did is that you worked within your constraints and did a little possibility spotting. I mean, you like you said, you had some reserves, but walk me through. Either was it all by yourself you made this decision? Who did you talk to? And how did you finally end up pulling the trigger?
Yeah, well, with recessions, typically, you get a lot of opportunity, right? Crisis creates opportunity. And so, kind of understanding that philosophy, when COVID hit, I was somehow in my brain kind of expecting a call. I didn't know from who, but I was somewhat gearing myself up that there may be this call happening. And I knew I'm not ready to sell at this moment. I'm still growing. And so I was kind of, set myself up in my head, like, okay, if this call comes, to be not surprised, A, and B, ideally ready for it. And so it's just something for, I think leaders and business owners to always remember, right? When recession does hit, but when recession does hit, because it will, when crisis comes, just to, possibly be on the lookout for that opportunity. It was when the call eventually did come, I was ready for it. And I mean, it went so quickly. I got the call on a Monday, and, I was talking about financing, I think Wednesday evening. So it allows you, and that mindset that I had already kind of set up for it allowed me to move very quickly. I made the decision on my own. Right. So although that's a little bit weird because we were in COVID, so I didn't really, I didn't have a great team around me at the moment, just by virtue of it being a weird time in history. I think, normally you'd probably have more people around you, right, to bounce the idea off of. It's always a very fast moving decision, but it was the right decision.
Great. Now, you have about, 40, 50 employees right now?
Yeah, about 40.
And back in 2009, during that wonderful time, about how many employees did you have back then?
We were at headcount probably about 10. So
when 2009 was happening, which was very tough, and also, again, with COVID, what was your leadership like? I mean, how did you address your team? Because for our listeners out there who haven't been through what Juliana and I have been through, look, on one side, you're stressed out because you got to worry about payroll and everything. And on the other side, you got to keep a positive face and keep everybody from completely freaking out. So you got to kind of balance that. So, going back to 2009 and then again in COVID, how did you handle those two situations?
Yeah, it is so hard. It is so hard, right? To, like you said, just that duality. You have to, really not freak people out, right? Even if you may be freaking out inside on your own, right? And you need to keep the systems going. And sometimes you're trying to build the systems at the same time. And, I think that we kind of go back to shape-shifting, that concept of shape-shifting. Leaders are constantly kind of shape-shifting, and because on days of real panic, right? When you had some real days of panic around the 2009, 2010, COVID, right? Real panic among folks. That's when we're constantly shape-shifting, right? We're going back and forth from our own internal crisis mode to, maybe get in front of our team and saying, it's okay, right? We just have to focus on step A, step B, and step C. And just kind of to go back to what we were saying earlier, because we're constantly shape-shifting through those moments, we may make the mistake of thinking others can shape-shift as well. Right. And a lot of people can't shapeshift in those moments. They really have to live in their kind of natural behavioral state.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's something that is I think it's really important for emerging leaders to remember, right? Just because you're shapeshifting constantly, just because you're good at it, or you maybe, you need to do it and it's become more natural to you, don't expect others to do that.
And was there ever a time you thought you were out? Like you're done? Like were you ever staring at the ceiling?
Yeah.
Like I would sometimes saying, I think this is it.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to pull through this.
Of
So
course.
how did you pull through it?
Of course. Those are good questions. I lean on my family a little bit, right? So you find those that you can be really, really vulnerable with. It may be, your partner, your family. For me, it's both. And you find that person that you can just say, okay, listen, I really need to kind of lay it all out for you right now and get this advice. And at those moments, for me, it's my father, right? My father and my husband, right? It's, for different people, they have they're different sounding board. And, in those cases, they've said, no, not quite yet, right? Not quite yet.
I think whether you look at it from a personal crisis, a business situation, I think it's important for everybody to understand that you don't have to go at it alone. I mean, you can reach out to somebody and have conversations with them, friends, mentors, even get somebody on LinkedIn if you don't have anybody, but find somebody that you can talk to, because you don't have to go through any of these challenges alone. And
so that's that's so true, Damon. So true.
Right, yeah, no, I mean, and so we've been through all these, ups and downs, these crazy things. I'm kind of reliving some of these stories through you. I really am, and it's awesome. And it's like, but the big question is, 30 years. What keeps you going?
Yeah. Sometimes I don't know.
And do you still love it as much?
Yeah, I love it. I really love it.
So do I.
I love it. I love it. I love business. I love my product. I love my clients. I love the work we do. I love my team. I mean, my team, like I have people on my team that I just so much respect for them. I mean, I have so much. It's just amazing, like, what they do and how they do it. Yeah, there's a lot of love, even after 30 years. And I don't know sometimes where some of this stuff comes from. I really don't. I think there's that nature or nurture question sometimes that comes up. I think there's a big part of me that I love being an entrepreneur. I think I loved it from when I was born.
So somebody's listening to this conversation. Let's not even say that they're an entrepreneur or a founder, but they are somebody who's bounced around from job to job. And I'm not going to say that's bad, but let's say that they just really want to try to connect and find something that they love, like I have, like you have. What advice do you give for them to at least just take the first step in finding a career that they can be satisfied with?
It takes patience, right? And I think that patience is kind of changed a little, like what patience, the well of patience that folks have has kind of seemed to me to gone down a little bit in the last 30 years. I mean, everyone's attention span is a lot shorter. I don't think anybody would argue that fact. So, to recognize that, right, that I recognize that myself, my attention span has gone from, here to here in the last, 10 years, but just to know that, number one, right? Like your attention span is you probably should have more attention span than you do right now, right? So to give things a little bit more than you think you should give things. Just because it's just in general, that's kind of where we are as a culture. Number two is, this is hard because I've never been an employee. So, I might be a little bit speaking out of turn, but, you do want to find a team that you love working with, right? And I love the team I work with, but I kind of chose the team I work with. So I know I'm coming from a place that it's a little bit easier to say that, but I can respect that it might be harder for folks to find a team if they're just interviewing, but to try to find that if you are in an organization, right, where you really do love the people you work with, to really sit with it, right, and see what you can do to make the organization money, right? I will say that if you can make the organization money, if you have ideas, right, if you're working for just an organization that's a business, right, if you can help the leaders, right, be more efficient and be more profitable, right, and you like the people you're working with, right, you can really, really make change for that company.
I got some good questions, but one question that I have is, or one statement that I have really, is that sometimes grass isn't always greener on the other side. And what Juliana said is really important around having a little bit more patience and don't always just jump, and realize that if you like the people you're working with, and maybe if you're having a challenge with your boss, maybe there's something that's not exactly perfect, you got to be assertive enough to have that conversation. Now, let's say that you have an individual that's working for you, right? I mean, you're the CEO of a small business, but you have somebody who's got great ideas or they really want to move through the organization. How would you recommend to that person to address those ideas or approach somebody in your position?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is the 1-2-1 idea, right? There's a 1-2-1 concept where, don't come to your boss with the problem, right? You come to your boss with, okay, you can come to your boss with the problem, come with two solutions at a minimum, 3 is ideal, and then 1 suggestion, right? So a lot of people just kind of come with the problem, right? I actually have this on my computer. I have this series of pictures. As I was painting a picture for somebody in my organization, imagine, I'm going to try to paint this picture for you, but imagine like you're in a field and there's a big hole in the field, right? It's a big, dangerous hole. And a lot of people, right, will just kind of walk through the hole and they won't say anything, right? It's like, okay, there's a hole in the ground, even though it's clearly dangerous. The experienced person will say, hey, there's a hole here. It's dangerous. Look out, right? The person who's really going to excel and, can really make a difference is they see the hole, right? And they're figuring out how to backfill it, right? They're helping me come up with solutions on how do you get that hole filled, right? And they're coming to me with, okay, you need, looks like we need, 3 wheelbarrows of dirt, and we got to get two people out here with 4 shovels or whatever, right? And they're immediately coming with that. Most people fall into category 1 and 2. They're either not going to say anything about the hole or they're going to point to the hole and say, what are you going to do about it?
That's really good. And also what I hear you saying in that too is that even if even if that hole is not your job lane,
Yeah.
if you want to get the attention of a small business CEO, a founder, or a leader, hey, step up and go get out of your lane and say, hey, look, there's this hole we have here, and I have some ideas on how to fix it. Again, it's taking ownership, and because I know that I appreciate that. I want people to stand up and share and figure out how to solve these problems, because we need more help than just trying to figure it out on our own. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, 80% of folks fall into the first two, 80% plus fall into the first two categories of either not saying anything about the hole or just pointing out the hole. It's pretty rare to find somebody who's coming up with the solutions on how to fill the hole. And for me, it's not too hard, right? You're just coming up with the quick list, but it really makes you stand out if you're the person that's figuring out how to backfill the hole.
I love it. Question I've always wanted to ask myself: do you ever wonder what you missed by, whether it's from learning or other opportunities, by not going out and working for somebody else?
Oh my God, I have those fantasies like all the time. I don't know if they're not fantasies, but they're just like these, like, what if? I mean, we're in the Bay Area, right? We're in a very, you can call it a very blessed part of the world. There's a lot of stuff going on here. We somehow landed through luck, right? Luck or karma or whatever, right? That we landed here.
It's true.
People,
we're very lucky.
Yeah, very, very lucky. And many people in the world, right, would give up, so much in life to just physically get here. And so, we have all this opportunity in the Bay Area, and it's just, my brain sometimes says, God, what if I took a job at Google and I was employee 8, right? What would my life be? So absolutely, because that's kind of, I bring up the Bay Area because it's actually, it was kind of something that was available to you and I, Damon, right? Yeah. We went a different route. We went the entrepreneur route, and it's weird because we do find ourselves in a part of the world where it's, for me, I run a very, kind of, I'll call it an analog business. We build things. I literally, we build, we design, we engineer, we construct, we install. We're in that built environment. And, here in the Bay Area, there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of software, there's a lot of, there's a lot of digital, we're the core of the digital world. So it is kind of, I do think about that a lot.
Do you have any advice for individuals who, not saying that you fell into this, but that fall into the comparison trap? Because I have in the past, right? Especially during the .com days, where I have Learnit, which is like almost like a brick and mortar business, and I'd see all my buddies, paper millionaires, on the .com days or whatever, and here I am still plugging it along. And for early on in my career, yeah, it kind of bummed me out. I mean, thought about it a little bit, but I got past it. I'm happy for them, and I don't think that does you any good in life to fall into the comparison trap. Do you have any advice on how people could avoid that or realize they're in it and get out of it?
Yeah, I would say let your mind go, right? You can always let your mind kind of do the little daydreamy thing or, fantasy thing or the comparison thing, but do kind of find some totem or anchor to bring you back, right? Because I think it's okay to let your brain kind of wander that. I think there's part of that process which can be a little healthy. It can get unhealthy, right? If you start living in the what ifs, right? But give yourself a little bit of grace and allow yourself to do that for a little bit, but then have some sort of something that brings you back, right, to really what you're doing right now. And usually that's gratitude, right? Gratitude, find something that you're grateful for, right? Come back to your gratitude list of, wow, but I've got so-and-so in my life, and I've got, this person, and I've got, whatever. I have this thing on my resume, or this product that I've developed, right? And that's kind of your totem.
I really like that. Gratitude. And the other thing I want to add on top of that is sometimes these people who look so amazing on Instagram or everything, they're not as great as they put their lives out to say they are, right? So, but I always wish people the very best. I really, like, if I have a friend or somebody I know who's really absolutely crushed it, I'm happy for them, and then, but what you said right there is so very important. Go back to gratitude, be so grateful for what you have. And we really are. Now, as we kind of wind down here, and you just mentioned we live in a digital world with AI. My first question is your organization AI ready? And what does that mean to you? And then that's just one question there. And then what's the future look like?
Yeah. Are we AI ready? I think, I don't know if anybody really is, but it's really about really having some level of openness to it, right? Which I very much am. I think there's some amazing tools out there, and I'm checking it out, I think, on a weekly basis, and I really encourage my team to do the same throughout the organization. So I feel like, yeah, we're generally AI ready, and I hope that we continue to be. What does the future hold? God, that is such a good question. I think the future is very bright if folks remain with that readiness. And we don't create this really dangerous divide. What I'm really nervous about is, this diverging kind of like, those that are ready and start to embrace it really leave those that aren't open and willing and accepting that it's coming. And there's this divide that's created, which is not good for any of us. There's just too much division as it is right now. We don't need any accelerant of division. So I hope that people, are not kind of doing this, kind of plugging their ears to it, because it's not gonna help.
Yeah, too much polarization. And also what I hear you saying is you got to adapt and evolve. Otherwise, I mean, we're moving at a pretty fast pace, and learning and growing is critical. As far as priority is for your organization, any big pivots or moves or changes in the future you see, as far as products or anything?
In terms of products, I mean, I think that AI should help project delivery, right? It should help communication, transparency. I think what we really are constantly pushing for in my organization is not just better product, but better product delivery, project delivery. I mean, I have the most respect and love for my clients. I'm just fortunate to have some of I just have to say, the best clients in the world, right? That build some of the most amazing things. And we want to just deliver the best level of transparent project delivery to them. So I think AI is really going to help us with that. It's going to help if we're open to it, right? Whether that could be, just more transparency to where our product is in the production pipeline. Do they want to know, is it waiting for material? Are we waiting for a particular piece of hardware? Is it waiting for the paint booth? Is it waiting for installation? Is it getting staged? Like, we want to be really transparent, all throughout our production pipeline. Where is your product, right? It's almost like, we kind of expect it now. Like, we order something from Amazon, right? And you literally can see kind of where it falls, kind of within the delivery, the supply chain or the delivery chain, right? Has it left the fulfillment warehouse? Is it on the truck? Is it coming up my street? And so we got used to that so fast. We got used to that really fast. And that's, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that as consumers, whether it's a B2B or a B2C, right, I think that we can begin to demand that. Like, where is my product? And I think that's very fair for my clients to really demand that of us. And I hope that AI is going to allow us to deliver that information to them.
That's a great point.
We have to push for it.
No, we don't have a choice, because others out there are doing that, and that's the mindset that customers are demanding it, and organizations like Amazon are fulfilling that. So we all need to level up our ability to do so, and AI is the tool that we need it. Mm-hmm. So we start off, we talked about your dad, and even like kind of the legacy he created for you. What do you want your legacy to be here in the Bay, either as a leader back for your team, if after you and I are at this conversation in 10 more years, we're doing it at 40, but looking back, what kind of impact do you want to look at on the people you made, but also this challenging city that we're going through, but also one of the most wonderful cities in the world, the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah. Probably I'd like my legacy I'd like to have an impact on women in the AEC world, the architecture, engineering, construction world. That's the world I live in. The kind of evolution of women in this space in the 30 years where I've been in business has been just amazing. I mean, I have been in the very early days. There were barely any women in the space. I'd go to many meetings, and then many days and even weeks would pass, and I wasn't interfacing with women. And it's changed where there's a lot of project teams where there are a lot more women, and I think that a lot of women that are in the space right now don't even remember the day, right, when they weren't surrounded by other women, which is awesome. And I just want that pervasiveness, right, of kind of women feeling welcome in the AEC space to continue, and whatever I can do to help push that forward, I'd love that to be part of my legacy.
I think that's a great goal. Well, to kind of recap all the stuff we talked about, I mean, you and I are really similar. We bootstrapped our businesses. We've been here 30 plus years. We've pivoted, made it through these different economic downturns. I love your stories about shape shifting, which I think is very interesting, how you could do it as a leader, but you got to understand that some people can't adapt that way. We talked about the importance of self-awareness as a leader, and then also, gauging others' strengths and how you could use tools for that, right? And to help you get better at that. Give yourself some grace as a leader. We're all going to have the moments of, oh my gosh, why did I do that, right? And I love your passion for your employees, the work that you do. And even though, listeners out there, even if you're not a founder and you work someplace, you can find that same kind of enjoyment where you love going to your work every single day. And so we've talked about so many wonderful things. What's one more thing that you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh my goodness, one more thing. I think
you thought you were off the hook.
Yeah, there's so much, I think that, the conversation around AI really, I mean, I'm sure Damon, you and I can go on for hours and hours. I think really encouraging people to be open to it, not be fearful of it, especially if you're an employee, right? I can understand it might be a little scary at the moment, but try not to approach it from a place of fear, right? Let's try to approach it from a place of it's a tool. It's a very strong tool. I get it. It's almost like, you get a tool that's like too powerful. Like, oh my God, how do I even like control this thing? But I think everybody can find and should find something to help their work be a bit more efficient. And I think it's really just about just be open to it, right? And let's guide it in a way that is really going to be helpful to us. I just really don't want to see it be a source of more division.
Right. But I think it's a good point that I don't think it's optional anymore. I think that you have to get involved and start using AI. Can't put your head in the ground. So Juliana, where can our listeners connect with you at?
I'm on LinkedIn, and actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to make sure I'm on LinkedIn. You find me as Juliana Sommer. Sometimes I do some iteration of my married and maiden name, Juliana.
Well, you don't have to worry about that because it's going to be in the show notes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, it's probably best place to find me is on LinkedIn, more than the other social media touch points. So.
Yeah, and they can, when they're at SFO, like I will be in a couple of days, I want to look at those signs and I'm going to say, hey, that's Juliana's company's sign.
Yeah,
right
if you don't get lost, then we did our job. So I hate hearing people get lost.
Yeah, well, this has been an awesome conversation. I've been looking forward to it for a long time with all the similarities we have. And, for listeners, one action I want you to take, and this comes up from the very end, if you're not using AI, start doing it now. And if you are using AI and it's just for, changing emails or whatever, use it for something else. Get beyond that, whether it's for decision making or planning something, but start getting yourself comfortable with doing that. And then for you leaders out there, who listen to this conversation. Are you really self-aware enough of yourself? If you're not, take a step back and reflect on that, and maybe implement some kind of one of these tools that Juliana's talking about, DISC or Work Genius from Pat Lencioni or something like that for your team. I think there's so many great things out there. And one last thing, I want everybody to stay curious, keep learning, have a great day. Thank you, Juliana. You're awesome.
No, you are too, Damon. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
It goes back to the definition, and it really is it's about influence and impact. And, some of the best leaders I know have huge influence and impact on me without any title, whether it's just showing up with